I moved out to my lakeside cabin for peace. After 20 years of firefighting in the city, I was tired, mentally, emotionally, and physically. My knees clicked every morning, my hands were covered in calluses that no amount of balm could soften, and my sleep was still haunted by sirens and smoke. So when I bought a 70-acre lot with an old cabin nestled on the north side of Lake Verdant, I thought I had finally escaped the madness. The land was mine, the lake, leased exclusively to me, and the dirt road cutting through the woods, that led only to my place, or so I thought. The trouble began on a quiet Sunday morning. I had just finished brewing a pot of dark roast and stepped out onto the porch. A pickup truck rolled up, spitting dust and gravel. Out came a woman in a pastel pink pantsuit, clipboard in hand, sunglasses too large for her face. She looked like someone who should have been barking orders in a gated suburban cul-de-sac, not trespassing on private property 2 miles into the woods. "You must be Mr. King," she said, like she already hated me. Margaret Bell, president of the Lake Verdant Shores HOA. I squinted at her. "You're lost. HOA doesn't cover this land." Her smile was tight. "Actually, we've redrawn our jurisdictional lines. Your property now falls within HOA boundaries. Effective immediately." I stared at her, coffee halfway to my lips. She continued, "You'll need to submit remodeling permits for your deck extension, remove the flagpole, it exceeds height limits, and attend the monthly HOA meetings. First Monday, 6:30 p.m. sharp." I took a slow sip. "I'm not in your HOA." "That's what I thought too," she said smugly. "But per our new maps—" "Lady," I said, "I don't care what kind of map you're using. This cabin's been in my family since '71. I bought the land outright. No HOA. Never signed a covenant. You people have no authority out here." She stiffened. "Well, if you refuse to cooperate, the HOA will be forced to impose fines, possibly even begin eviction proceedings." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out. She wasn't joking. That evening, I went through the property records, water, rights, and title deeds twice. I even called up my old friend Eli, who'd handled the legal side when I bought the place. He chuckled darkly when I told him what happened. HOA trying to claim jurisdiction over sovereign land? They've lost. They're mines. You think they're bluffing? Most likely. But it wouldn't hurt to pay the courthouse a visit. I did more than visit. I pulled every document tied to my property, the original mineral rights, water access leases from the county, and, most critically, a deed that confirmed I not only owned the land up to the lake, but also a 3-acre plot just west of their little neighborhood. That plot? Their only parking lot. The one their entire community used for guest access, overflow, and mail delivery. The HOA didn't know it yet, but they'd built on my land. 3 days later, I received my first official letter. It was printed on HOA stationery, complete with their cheesy slogan, "Keeping Lake Verdant Shores beautiful and orderly." It read like a threat disguised as a courtesy notice. Violations included flagpole height, unauthorized outbuilding, my shed, failure to maintain lawn aesthetics, as if wild grass needed mowing, and non-payment of dues. Dues, I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the fire pit. 2 more letters followed. Then came a knock at the door. 2 men in HOA windbreakers and clipboards. I told them the same thing I told Margaret, then I handed them a copy of my deed and told them to leave. They said nothing, just took photos of my cabin and left without a word. I installed security cameras the next day. Then came the fines. I'm talking thousands of dollars in fake fees. Slapped on my front door, mailed to my P.O. box, emailed, even texted somehow. I ignored them all until the sheriff came knocking. Now, Sheriff Tom is a good man. Knew my dad. We served the same fire district back in the day. When he stepped out of the cruiser, hat in hand, I knew this wasn't a social call. "Travis," he said, "I don't want to do this." "Then don't." He sighed. They filed a civil complaint. Claimed you're in breach of community standards. They're demanding you appear before a private hearing panel. I folded my arms. A private hearing panel? What is this, Soviet? Russia? They're arguing that the new zoning overlays your land, but that's not legally binding without consent. I know, and I agree. But you're still going to have to defend yourself in court if they push this. And they've got money, Travis. I stared past him toward the lake. It was calm, still, silent. They want to start a war, I muttered. They're going to get one. The first counterstrike was simple. I had Eli draft a cease and desist letter that cited property encroachment. Then I fenced off the lot next to their subdivision, the one they thought they owned for parking. No more access. They were forced to park down the hill nearly a quarter-mile from their own homes. Margaret was furious. She sent another compliance agent out to demand I remove the fence. This time, I didn't answer the door. I watched from inside as he stood outside, confused, pacing back and forth. Then came the retaliation. The HOA declared my private dock a public nuisance. They claimed it violated shoreline ordinances that didn't exist. A week later, someone vandalized my mailbox. 2 days after that, someone shot out one of my security cameras. Filed a police report. Sheriff Tom came again, frustrated. I told them to back off. They're not listening. You think it's them? He nodded grimly. Or someone they hired. So I took the next step. I contacted the county and had the lake water rights recertified under my name. No one else had the lease. I had exclusive recreational rights to the water. That meant no fishing, no boating, no swimming without my permission. I posted signs, private lake, trespassers will be prosecuted. The HOA erupted. Margaret tried to argue that no one can own a lake. I showed her the county certificate and the lease agreement. She threatened to sue. I welcomed it. Next, I met with the zoning board. Quietly, privately. I gave them a complete dossier proving my property was never subject to HOA jurisdiction. In fact, my land had been grandfathered in under a different zoning clause before the HOA even existed. Their faces fell when I showed them the maps. We'll review this, one said nervously. Please do, I said, and let them know that if they set foot on my land again, I'll have them charged with trespassing. That weekend, I saw drones flying over my cabin. I tracked one back to a parked SUV registered to an HOA board member. I filed another report. The local paper caught wind of the drama. A reporter called me asking for comment. I declined. But a week later, a headline ran, "Veteran firefighter fights back against rogue HOA takeover." Margaret went ballistic. She wrote a rebuttal, called me a dangerous recluse, and claimed I was trying to disrupt community harmony. Community harmony? You'd think I'd painted pentagrams on my roof and played Slayer on full blast every morning, but I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. Their members started turning on them. Families couldn't park, guests couldn't visit. Their kayaks were confiscated for being illegally moored on my lake, and fines were stacking up for them, this time from the county. And I wasn't done yet. I was just getting started. The morning after the newspaper article, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I noticed something peculiar. 3 SUVs rolled into the woods and stopped right outside the fence I had installed around the parking lot I legally owned. Out stepped Margaret Bell, 2 HOA board members, and, of all people, a lawyer in a navy blue suit who looked like he'd never walked on anything but marble floors. They stood outside the gate, pointing at the no trespassing sign I had mounted on the post. I watched them from behind my tinted cabin windows, taking a bite from my bacon sandwich. Let them stare. Let them plan. I wasn't just prepared. I had already played my next hand before they arrived. You see, I wasn't just some woodsman defending his cabin. I was a strategist, a planner. And these suburban tyrants had no idea I'd been playing chess while they were playing HOA checkers. 2 nights earlier, I had retained a high-powered land use attorney from the Capitol. Her name was Rachel Trent, and she specialized in exposing corrupt HOAs. Her first advice: get everything in writing, record every encounter, and let them hang themselves with their own arrogance. So I did just that. Margaret had no idea that her earlier threats, those letters, the fines, and her recorded outbursts, were now in a neat digital folder labeled Exhibit A, Harassment and Fraud. That day, Rachel filed a lawsuit in district court against the Lake Verdant Shores HOA. The claims: illegal harassment, fraudulent fines, attempted hostile takeover of private property, trespassing property damage, malicious interference with water rights, and unauthorized land development on my 3-acre lot. And here's the kicker. We filed for an immediate injunction. I wanted them frozen. No more letters, no more drones. No more anything until a judge sorted this out. But I didn't stop there. I dug deeper into their HOA's records, public filings, county permits, financials. Turns out they were operating in the red. The HOA had over-leveraged themselves building a new community center, betting on dues from new territory expansion to cover the costs. My land, my cabin, that was the crown jewel in their fantasy expansion plan. They thought I was an old hermit with no fight left. Instead, they'd poked a man with time, resources, and nothing to lose. Within a week, the court granted the injunction. The HOA could no longer send me notices, approach my property, or interfere with the lake. That very afternoon, I sent my own notice to every HOA member. The headline on my letter read, "To all residents of Lake Verdant Shores, you've been lied to." I attached every piece of proof I had: legal descriptions of my land, proof of water rights, zoning maps, and the court's injunction. I also informed them that effective immediately, their parking lot was permanently closed to anyone without written permission. Violation would result in towing and prosecution. By the next morning, my inbox was flooded with apologies, confusion, and messages from dozens of homeowners asking if they could speak with me off the record. Turns out, the community wasn't just upset. They were furious. Margaret had never told them the HOA didn't own the parking lot. She'd promised a boat launch project, a kayak dock, even proposed building a second playground on my land. All of it funded by expansion dues collected from the residents. And now those folks were sitting in their driveways, unable to host family, getting fined by their own HOA for unauthorized curb parking. They began to rebel, homeowners. Started attending the HOA meetings and demanding Margaret resign. Others refused to pay their dues. A few even camped outside my gate with coffee and donuts, hoping to chat and apologize for the nonsense. It was flattering, but I wasn't finished yet. I hired a survey crew to officially remap the area, placing legal boundary markers around the lake and the parking lot. I also built a locked gate across the parking entrance, complete with motion sensors, a solar-powered security camera, and a keypad access panel. Guess who didn't get the code? Margaret filed a desperate counter motion in court. Her claim? That the HOA had a prescriptive easement for long-term use of the parking lot. Rachel laughed so hard on the phone she nearly dropped it. "They never filed for one," she said. "And you've posted signs and kept it private the whole time. This is going to backfire." And it did. The judge not only denied their claim, he also sanctioned the HOA for wasting court time. The final nail came 2 weeks later. Rachel uncovered a financial bombshell in their records. Margaret had approved a $30,000 consulting fee to her son's shell company to evaluate dock compliance. It was a fake contract. The money vanished. The homeowners saw it, and the board exploded. They removed her as HOA president by unanimous vote, but she wasn't done. Oh no. Like every tyrant exposed to the light, she doubled down. Margaret accused me of bribery, sabotage, and subversive behavior. She went on the local radio station and compared me to a sovereign citizen extremist. She even tried to involve the mayor. Unfortunately for her, the mayor was my cousin, and he hated HOA overreach even more than I did. At the final hearing, I wore my best flannel shirt. The courtroom was packed. Residents, reporters, attorneys, and even a few curious retirees from other neighborhoods. Rachel walked up to the podium like a lioness ready to feast. She laid out everything: the fake fines, the illegal land grab, the trespassing, the harassment, and the parking lot they had been squatting on for years. Margaret's new lawyer tried to argue that the HOA was only attempting to preserve community integrity. The judge interrupted. By threatening eviction from land you don't own, by building on someone else's lot, you're lucky this isn't a criminal case. The ruling was swift. Final judgment in my favor. HOA permanently barred from any enforcement action against me. $275,000 in damages awarded to cover legal fees, property damage, and emotional distress. HOA required to issue public apologies and notify all members that my land and lake were off limits. But the cherry on top? The court ordered the HOA to vacate my parking lot within 30 days, and if they failed, I was authorized to sell the land to the highest bidder. I already had a buyer lined up, a private security firm that wanted to build a boat access rest area for first responders. They offered $600,000. The HOA begged me not to sell. Homeowners pleaded. Margaret was no longer in charge, but the new board wanted to make amends, so I made them a counteroffer. I would lease them back the parking lot for $1,000 per car, per year. No exceptions, no guests, no refunds. They agreed. Today, I sit on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the wind ripple across my lake. My dock is quiet, my mailbox is intact, and my security camera now doubles as a wildlife cam. I even caught a black bear last week sniffing around. As for Margaret, last I heard, she moved to Florida, where she joined another HOA. Some people never learn, but the residents here, they learned. Never underestimate a man who owns the land beneath your feet. And the lake your kids want to swim in. I didn't just win. I reminded them that out here, in the woods, you don't get to make the rules, especially when the man you're trying to control already owns the map.